In today's world, people are more disconnected than ever. Anxiety, loneliness, and depression are rampant, and young people are desperate for meaningful relationships. From the beginning, Edge has created opportunities for people to develop in their personal, professional, and spiritual lives.
My relationship with my mentor is awesome. Shout out to Jason. He's there for me in terms of any questions I have, both professionally and personally. Earlier this year, my dad had COVID, and he was one of the first people to check in with me regarding that. So it's nice to know that he cares about me as a whole human being.
Edge continues to provide ways for you to develop as a whole person, to grow yourself, and to find your role in your community and make an impact. Edge offers a variety of programs and events to provide community and safe spaces for whole person development to occur. Edge groups, Edge work, and Edge events are our current product offerings, but we are always looking to expand as a way to better serve our community and to be able to positively impact more lives. We believe that people grow better together. We are all made for community. Once you have expressed interest in participating in an Edge group, we will pair you with 5 to 7 other young professionals and a carefully selected Edge-trained mentor. And together, you will navigate life, including personal growth, career development, and faith. Edge group participants commit to a 1-hour virtual gathering with their group every other week for 1 year. And because Edge Groups is a virtual program, you can experience the power of intergenerational mentoring from anywhere.
I'm Toni McEwen. I work for Corteva AgriScience, and I lead our global HR service centers. I do think I have the best Edge group because these women are constantly showing up for one another. So while I'm technically the mentor, there's a lot of moments where I sit back and I don't say a lot, and they just speak into each other's lives.
Edge at Work is a 1-year cohort-based program that focuses strictly on personal and professional development. Leveraging a curriculum that we co-created with Butler University, emerging leaders are provided a safe space to focus on their own personal and professional development. We focus on everything from mental wellness to overcoming failure and self-limiting behaviors to receiving feedback and managing change. Edge Events is where our entire community comes together. Events are the glue that bring folks from all of our programs together to share life, learn from each other, and address relevant topics within our lives and communities.
I struggled in my early 20s with figuring out you have to take ownership of your career and choices. And I think Edge really helped me gain clarity to make those choices.
I wanted to get involved because I frankly wish I would have had something like this 20 years ago when I started my career.
If you are a young person who is looking for deeper connection and community, Edge is for you. For those more seasoned, we are always in need of strong mentors. Your life experiences should be shared with others. If you are a business owner or executive and would like to provide a unique opportunity to your employees, Edge at Work would aid in their own personal and professional development journeys. Learn more about how we can partner with you at edgementoring.org. Dave Evans has had a storied career and seems to just be getting started. Dave joined Apple in the early days and worked with Steve Jobs as he led the original product teams for the mouse and the laser printer. He then went on to co-found Electronic Arts. Dave now teaches at Stanford and is renowned for co-developing the framework for design thinking, which became Stanford's Life Design Lab. Dave co-authored the #1 New York Times best-selling book, Designing Your Life, and recently released Designing Your Work Life. I am pleased to publicly announce for the first time that Edge has formed a partnership with Stanford's Life Design Lab and that Dave's Designing Your Life principles will now be included as part of our Edge at Work curriculum. In fact, professors from Dave's team at Stanford will be included in our October Edge at Work event. A quick side note and shameless plug, if you have a business that would like to participate in our Edge at Work program, now is the time. The curriculum that we created with Butler University that's being further enhanced by Stanford's participation is impacting the lives of all of our millennial participants. Edge at Work is a world-class offering, and we would love for you and your organization to be involved. Check us out at edgementoring.org for more details. So, now that I have given the introduction of Dave and my shameless plug for Edge at Work, let's hand things off to Dave.
Greetings, I'm Dave Evans, co-founder of the Stanford Life Design Lab and co-author of Designing Your Life and now Designing Your Work Life. And the lovely folks at Edge have asked me to come and talk with you for their mentoring conference talking about your lives. And we're gonna have some conversation when you get together, but here's a little tee up on the way into that. So what I wanna talk to you about is going from FOMO to JOMO. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, okay, so we wrote this book called Designing Your Life. And the tagline is Designing Your Life, How to Build the Well-Lived and Joyful Life. So what do we want? We want a joyful life. Apparently that's what Bill and I and our publishers decided was something that a lot of people would be attracted to. And that's what a lot of people have been attracted to. Like so far, 600,000 people in 23 languages have been attracted to building a joyful life. Now, how about you? Well, if you're like me and my friends right now, what you're experiencing, I sit here 1 mile from a fire evacuation border. I've been breathing smoke for a week on top of the pandemic, on top of everything else. And what we are learning is the big killjoy to the joy of life is fear. So you got joy over here, you got fear over here. And everybody is scared right now. Everybody's experiencing FOMO. The fear of missing out. Oh wait, not really the fear of missing out. During the pandemic, it's the fact of missing out. So if you're like everybody I know, you're in FOMO big time. Both the fact of missing out, which is reminding you to be fearful of missing out because you don't want to be missing out. And what if this pandemic thing goes on forever? I mean, how long am I going to be missing out? This is not working for me. Okay, so it's time for what we call a reframe. And the reframe is this. You got to go from FOMO to JOMO, the fear of missing out, to the joy of missing out. What? The joy of missing out? How does that work? Okay, well, let's go back to the top. Designing your life. What's that all about? Well, what we did at the Stanford Life Design Lab, and we've been doing for 14 years now, is helping people have creative, innovative solutions to overcoming being stuck. Now, why are people stuck? They're stuck because of what we call dysfunctional beliefs. There are a bunch of them. These are ideas that are either just flat out not true, or at least they're not generative. They're not going to help you build the well-lived and joyful life. And there are very common bad ideas, which right now are having a heck of a day. Two in particular I want to point out. The first one is, hey, what's your passion? You know, are you following your passion? Well, the pandemic won't let me. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, here's the problem. Why is what's your passion actually a dysfunctional belief? It's a dysfunctional belief because, according to the research, 8 out of 10 people answer the question, what's your passion? By saying either, gosh, Dave, I don't know, I haven't found one yet, I hope to, or I've got a bunch of them. Which did you want to hear about first? Now, in either of those incredibly normal cases of people, 8 out of 10 people have one of those two answers, what's wrong with that person? Nothing. They're a regular human being. Because passion isn't the starting place for everybody's life. It's not even necessarily a prerequisite that everybody has a passion. And if you find one, usually it's the result of the well-lived life, not the starting place. Now be very careful what questions you ask yourself. See, questions have belief systems. And before you let a question be a life organizing or particularly a life judging question for you, be sure you believe its belief system. What's your passion? Believes everybody has a passion. You should know it early in life. It's the beginning of the life journey. And once discovered, the world will let you do it and hopefully make a living, maybe even make a killing doing it. All 5 of those are untrue. Not one of those is true. We're pro-passion, don't get me wrong, but we're not pro the presupposition that passion precedes everything. That's a big dysfunctional belief, and a lot of people are stuck on it. And it leads to the next one, my personal favorite, which is, well, maybe it's your passion, maybe not, but at least, are you living your best life? Are you, in fact, living your best life? I mean, what a noble thing. Who doesn't want to live their best life? But that's a dysfunctional belief too. Why? Well, look, the word best has a specific denotative meaning, a dictionary meaning. It means a series of alternatives can be compared one to another using one set of objective, fair criteria that looks at each one of those alternatives, and in so doing, can tell you which one is the best one. Door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, right? I just bought a motorcycle. I'm fulfilling, the boomer guy life dream, I did a whole bunch of analysis. Actually, my brother-in-law did the analysis for 9 months, and I can tell you, if you're looking for an English retro street parallel twin, I can tell you all about the 5 different models and why the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 is the right choice. That was the best motorcycle to buy. But we're talking about life here. Now, I'm also 67 years old. I have 5 adult children, 4 are married. I have 8.7, 8.9 grandchildren, 9 by October. I'm on my 6th career. The choices I'm looking at right now are kind of interesting. So, for instance, literally, for me, I could either lean way into this educational reformer thing. I'm really an unemployed marketing guy from Silicon Valley, but no, after 14 years at Stanford, apparently I really get where education should go. I can spend a lot of time talking to educators about fundamentally changing the university. And oh, by the way, post-pandemic, the university world is going to get reinvented. It's a brilliant time to be a reformer. Or I have another job part-time in New York. Oh yeah, remember New York? Where I coach social entrepreneur CEOs and founders who are developing organizations to go off and make the world a better place using capitalism in a positive way. I could coach a bunch of CEOs to go change the world. Or did I mention I've got 8.7 grandchildren? And a year and a half ago, my kids, who are in their 30s, came to me and said, Dad, by the way, we think it's great that the book is so cool, but you keep saying family is so important. Our kids don't know you. You're never here. You're always on planes. Well, that stopped. But nonetheless, where have you been? My father killed himself when I was 9 years old. I always wanted to be a dad, never had one. Now I'm a grandfather of all these children, and I'm not spending any time with them. So you tell me, what's the better life? Educational reformer, social entrepreneur, CEO coach, or grandfather? Which one's better? They're not better or worse, they're radically different. Life is like that. It's not this is better than that. It's not even apples versus oranges. It's apples versus frogs versus steel. I mean, what's better, frogs or steel? Quickly. It doesn't work. What we have noticed is that every one of us contains more aliveness than one lifetime permits us to live, i.e., there's more than one of you in there. In fact, we actually have an exercise to get at that question. We call it, how many lives are you? Now, if you were live with me and we were all together, we'd actually do this together. I wish we could, we can't, but I'll emulate it for you. So imagine, because at Stanford we do research, we got a bunch of physicists, and we're really good at this cosmology stuff. Let's say we really did figure it out, that there is a multiverse. There are infinite parallel universes in the world, but angstroms apart from one another if we but knew how to measure in the 19th dimension. Let's say that's true. Let's also say that we also figured out string theory, which means we now have access to concurrent consciousness, and you can be aware of all your parallel selves in all the parallel universes, i.e., you can be as many of you as you want. But one unusual rule in the multiverse might be you have to reserve a head. You can't waste lives in the universe. You can be as many people as you want, but you can't throw them away. The universe kind of abhors wastage. So I have to ask you a question. How many lives are you? How many slots in the parallel universe world would you like to reserve a head for yourself? Kind of like open table. You can even have multiple copies of the same life. Let's say you love the life you're in now, that you, like my daughter Lisa, the first time she went to Disneyland at the age of 5, decided a really cool way to spend 9 hours is to ride Dumbo 47 times in a row. You want to go try Peter Pan? No, I like this. Let's stay here. So you could do Dumbo 47 times. And what I would do if we were all together, I'd go 1, 2, 3, shout out your number. How many lives do you want? We've done this hundreds of times. I had to go 1, 2, 3, and then you hear, infinite, 100, 270, all these numbers. And I listen very carefully, and I instantaneously come up with a median, and my average median over the past probably 20,000 people have asked that question is 8. By the way, sidebar. Turns out, the older the median age of the group I'm talking to, the higher that number becomes. What's that tell you? That tells you you're not getting older, you're getting bigger. The young people don't have all the creative ideas. The old people have had enough life experience to get it. So as time goes by, it gets harder and more wonderful and bigger and more thorny. So we got to figure this stuff out. So the whole point being, let's say you are 8. Let's say on average, people are 8 lives worth of aliveness. Okay, I lied. That exercise called a Godonkin experiment, making stuff up in your head, isn't really true. You get 1 life. So if you're 8 lives worth of aliveness and you get 1, 7 out of 8 of you isn't going to happen. 87% of you will never occur. Of course, you're missing out. If you're not missing out, you're not paying any attention. We live in a target-rich, incredibly rich world, even during the pandemic. You are a huge creature, and you are way bigger than your lifetime will permit you to be. You can do lots of different things, but nowhere near you're going to get done scratching the surface of who you are. Of course you're missing out. So, even generically, we recommend JOMO, the joy of missing. You see something go by like, oh God, that's so cool. I'm sitting here in the 365 studio. Who knew there was a really cool sound and video studio like around the corner from my house in sleepy little Santa Cruz? These guys had this really interesting life. What if I got into the media world? What if the media world went by? Peter might quit and I could take that job. Wow, maybe I did the wrong thing. Maybe I missed it. No. You kind of go, oh, and yet, look, blocks away from my house, there's so much cool stuff going by. Isn't it a wonderful reminder we live in such a rich world? Isn't it a joy to be so alive that there are more ways you could live than you can possibly shake a stick at? It's nice to live from plenty, not scarcity. That's where we're coming from. Now, what does that tell you? If we want to move from FOMO to JOMO, how do we get there? Well, that is the gift of the pandemic. I'm not trying to make lemonade out of lemons. That's trying to take a bad thing and tell you that it's good. The pandemic is awful. But if you live well into it, there's a gift to be had, which is it will teach you how to find JOMO. By virtue of generative acceptance, the freedom of constraint to lead you into designing your life using BDO, not BTO. What do I mean by that? What the pandemic is an incredible constraint, and the only way through it is to accept reality. Accept is step one, or you call it actually step zero of the design process. You can't solve a problem you're not willing to have. Interestingly, by the way, in the Kubler-Ross grief process, the fifth and final step is acceptance. And in design, the zero and beginning step is acceptance. The end of grief is the beginning of design. What that does is that accepts the freedom of my constraints, say, this is the life I can live for now. In the neutral zone, as William Bridges, the change expert, describes it, we're in between the life we used to know and the life we're heading to, but we're in between in a great place called the neutral zone. Well, you can still be fully alive there. And you do that by living into a designing your life mentality of having ideas about which version of you could possibly be. Which brings us to the all-important theological idea for this morning, which is the scandal of particularity. Or, why is Jesus like a rocket ship? The scandal of particularity. Now, I'm told, by the way, by Todd and the folks at Edge that most of you think Jesus rocks the house, and even those of you who haven't made that decision yet are interested and curious, and you're kicking the tires. So talking about Jesus for a minute makes some sense. Now, it turns out that in the world of religion and theology and cosmology, there's this term called the scandal of particularity. It's particularly assigned to Christianity. Why? Because Christianity, when the religions get together and have a beer at the bar one day, in the big existential bar, the other religions get together and go up to Christianity and go like, where do you get off? Where do you get off arguing that in this one particular person, this one incarnational representation of the divine that you call the Messiah in Jesus, that there's everything we need to know? Are you serious? Where do you get off with that? That's scandalous. It's scandalously particular. One guy in space and time could actually represent something that big. You're either full of crap or there's something going on here that's rather mystical. And we think it's the latter. The scandal of particularity is, by the way, true of all humanity. Just getting way theological for just a minute, you take Colossians and Philippians. Two things that talk about who Jesus really was. So in Colossians, the great Christological passage uses the phrase, Christ in whom the fullness of God is pleased to dwell. Whoa. There's a person in whom the fullness of God is pleased to dwell. Like there's room in there. Like God's got plenty of room. God, whatever that really means, got plenty of room inside Jesus. Okay, that's pretty trippy. Then we get a little bit forward, and Paul recommends, have this mind also among you that was in Christ Jesus, who did not consider equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. So you take these two great ideas and bang them right into each other. They make no freaking sense. Christ in whom the fullness of God is pleased to dwell, and Jesus not only didn't try to live into all of that, he didn't even think it was worth trying to hold on to, but he empties himself. Now, if Jesus is called the second Adam, he is the fully human person. And the reason, by the way, design makes any sense in this conversation at all is because it's called human-centered design. And if we're trying to be anything, we're trying to be fully human. And that's all Jesus is doing, is just showing you what it looks like to be fully human. So we're all on the same page here. So if Jesus is trying to be fully human, then full humanness means releasing what you don't have the opportunity to fully become in order to be fully present to what you can become. That's the scandal of particularity in your individual life. I think you could actually rephrase that thing from Philippians and say, in Dave's case or in Peter's case or in Chris's case, you're behind the camera, Dave did not hold equality with being all of Daveness a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, living into one particular form of life that he could live as joyfully as possible, and in so doing became fully human. So the invitation, if you're just an observer of the reality of life, and how many lives are you, and if you're a thoughtful Christian thinking about what does it really mean to be a human person, if you want to take some notes off Jesus' life, it's all about this constraint, the freedom of constraint to be one particular life. That's why Jesus is just like a rocket. How do rockets work? I happen to have a master's in thermosciences and mechanical engineering, got to use it every now and then, so I'm going to use it on you with an illustration. If you ever go up and look at a rocket engine, it's not a nozzle like you have on your hose at home. You take your hose out, it has a little nozzle on the end of it, and it makes the water come out in a fast jet. And the narrower you squeeze the little thing down, the faster it goes. Rockets don't look like that. They come down to a nozzle, and then they flare back out again, and they get really, really, really wide. If you look at a really big rocket, there's a little tiny nozzle at the top, then a huge big skirt coming off the bottom. It's called an expanding, contracting nozzle. It contracts, and then it expands. Why do they do that? Because gas is a compressible fluid, and if you want that thing to go really, really, really fast, when you just use a contracting nozzle with a compressible fluid, it maxes out at Mach 1. It will never flow faster than the speed of sound. Very complex to explain it, just trust me, it's true. But if you bring that nozzle down, skinny, and you widen it out again, the thing starts to expand, and you can get Mach 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can get supersonic flow by contracting and then expanding. But if you don't contract, you never get there. Human beings are the same. You are contracted by the freedom of constraint, the constraint of living in one space and time, in one moment in reality, in one relationship with a spouse or kids, in one career at any particular point in time. And it's an incredibly small thing, way smaller than you. But by being fully present and going through that nozzle, the chance to be fully alive and fully experience the fullness of who you are, not doing everything you could do, but being your full self by being fully present is possible. But you only get there by freely accepting that constraint. And that's the gift of the pandemic. Because we are so freaking constrained right now. There are so many constraints, and FOMO is going crazy. The fact of missing out is really informing the fear of missing out. Like, oh my God, what if this never changes? Then I will never be a person again. Yes, you can't. Look, it sucks. This thing really sucks. And I get it. Again, I mean, we've got COVID going on here full time. We've got conflagration and fires going on here full time. And not to put too fine a point on it, but my wife is dying of cancer right now. So I got the triple cocktail. I got cancer, I got COVID, I got conflagration. It sucks. Okay? It sucks. But you can still be fully alive. You may not be fulfilled. You may not be all you can be, but you can be fully here, fully alive, and fully present. And you do that by doing BDO, not BTO. You face the best doable option, not the best theoretical option. Life isn't about getting what you want. Life is about wanting what you've got and living fully into it. That's what we try to give you with these tools with designing your life. That's, by the way, what the wisdom that mentors can provide to you to help you hear your own truth in a way that allows you to deeply accept, generatively accept the situation you're in, not as a victim, not as a stoic hero, but as an engaged, humble person who can design their life forward. And some of our colleagues are going to work with you guys who are in the program. You'll hear more about actually how to do this life design stuff. But all I want you to understand today is the invitation is to move from FOMO, the fear of missing out, informed by the current fact of missing out, to the joy of missing out, being reminded that you're a steward of a resource much bigger than life offers, and isn't that a gift? And you can do that by allowing yourself to be the rocket ship, accepting the doable option, not the imaginable option, and living fully into it.